the pre-dawn darkness of the royal kraal, a figure moves with the silent precision that once made him the most feared warrior in all of southern Africa. His muscles carry the memory of 1,000 battles. His scars tell stories of victories that built an empire. His name is whispered with reverence from the Drakensberg Mountains to the Indian Ocean. But tonight, something has changed. The spear that once defended the throne now gleams with different purpose. The hands that swore sacred oaths of protection now calculate the perfect angle for assassination. The heart that once beat in rhythm with royal commands now pounds with the thunder of rebellion. This is Makabayi Kamadonsela, the greatest general in Zulu history, the architect of military innovations that redefined African warfare, the warrior whose loyalty seemed as unshakable as the mountains themselves. Yet, here he stands, betrayal burning in his chest like a fever that will not break. The protector has become the predator. The shield has become the sword. How does absolute loyalty transform into absolute treachery? What breaks a bond forged in blood and battle? What drives the kingdom's greatest defender to become its most dangerous enemy? The answers lie not in foreign conquest or obvious ambition, but in something far more corrosive. The slow poison of watching power corrupt the very ideals that once inspired devotion. Tonight, the greatest warrior in Zulu history prepares to commit the greatest betrayal, and a kingdom will learn that no throne is safe when its strongest pillar decides to crumble. To understand why the greatest warrior chose treachery, you must first witness the kingdom that made such a choice both unthinkable and inevitable. The Zulu nation stands as a testament to military genius and ruthless discipline. Under Shaka's revolutionary leadership, scattered clans transformed into the most formidable fighting force Africa had ever seen. The short-stabbing assegai replaced traditional throwing spears. The bullhorn formation encircled enemies in embraces of death. Warriors became instruments of collective will, rather than individual glory. This transformation created unprecedented power. Zulu armies moved across the landscape like natural disasters, absorbing some tribes through conquest, others through voluntary submission. Territory expanded exponentially. Cattle herds multiplied beyond counting. The kingdom's influence stretched across vast regions that had never known unified rule. But military excellence demanded brutal sacrifices. Warriors remained celibate until proven in battle. Marriage required royal permission. Cowardice meant death. Failure meant death. Sometimes simply displeasing superiors meant death. The discipline that created invincibility also created an atmosphere where individual worth became subordinate to collective efficiency. The royal court evolved into something unprecedented in African politics, a place where absolute power concentrated in single hands while being exercised through elaborate hierarchies of command. Kings ruled through fear as much as respect. Generals commanded through intimidation as much as inspiration. Success bred its own dangers. The military machine that protected the kingdom from external enemies began consuming the kingdom's internal harmony. The discipline that created strength also created resentment among those forced to enforce policies they privately questioned. The very perfection of the system contained the seeds of its own destruction. Among all the fierce commanders in Shaka's revolutionary army, one figure towers above the rest, not just in physical stature, though he possesses that, but in the combination of tactical brilliance, personal courage, and inspirational leadership that defines truly great military minds. General Makabayi Kamadonsela represents everything the Zulu military system was designed to produce. His rise through the ranks tells the story of merit rewarded, of humble origins elevated through exceptional service. From common warrior to regimental commander to the king's most trusted military advisor, each promotion earned through demonstrated excellence in the only currency that mattered: victory. His innovations in battlefield tactics complement Shaka's strategic vision perfectly. While the king conceptualizes revolutionary approaches to warfare, Makabayi translates those concepts into operational reality. His training methods produce the disciplined warriors who execute the bullhorn formation with devastating precision. His logistical genius ensures that Zulu armies can move faster and strike harder than any enemy expects. But perhaps most importantly, Mkabayi possesses the rare ability to inspire absolute loyalty among his subordinates, while maintaining that same loyalty toward his superiors. Warriors follow him not just because they fear disobedience, but because they trust his judgment and believe in his commitment to their welfare. This relationship extends upward to the king himself. Shaka values Mkabayi not just as a military asset, but as the one general whose counsel carries weight in royal decision-making. The warrior becomes more than an instrument of royal will. He becomes a partner in shaping that will. Yet, this very intimacy plants the seeds of eventual betrayal. The closer Mkabayi moves to the center of power, the more clearly he sees its corrupting effects. The transformation of Mkabayi from loyal warrior to treacherous conspirator doesn't happen suddenly. It grows gradually, fed by daily exposure to a military system whose noble purposes gradually become subordinate to the personal whims of increasingly paranoid leadership. The first crack appears during the Great Mourning period following Queen Mother Nandi's death in 1827. Shaka's grief transforms from understandable sorrow into kingdom-threatening madness. The king declares that proper mourning requires extraordinary sacrifices from his people. No crops can be planted, no milk consumed. Any pregnant woman must die, along with her husband. Mkabayi watches in growing horror as these policies systematically undermine everything the Zulu military has fought to protect. Warriors weaken from malnutrition precisely when external threats demand peak readiness. The population that should support military operations instead suffers under arbitrary royal commands. Most disturbing of all is the king's increasing reliance on fear rather than respect to maintain authority. Executions become more frequent and more arbitrary. Military commanders die not for battlefield failures, but for failing to demonstrate sufficient enthusiasm for policies they privately consider destructive. Mkabayi finds himself forced to implement orders that violate his understanding of military necessity and moral responsibility. His warriors look to him for guidance, but the guidance he must give serves royal paranoia rather than strategic logic. The breaking point comes when Shaka orders the execution of several junior officers whose only crime was expressing private doubts about the kingdom's direction. Among them is Mkabayi's own nephew, a promising young warrior whose questions about royal policy were reported by informants seeking to curry favor with the king. That night, as Mkabayi watches his family member die for the crime of thinking independently, loyalty dies and treachery is born. September 22nd, 1828. The date that would forever change the meaning of loyalty in the Zulu kingdom. The conspiracy requires military precision and intimate knowledge of royal routines, advantages that only Mkabayi possesses in full measure. His position as trusted general grants him access to the king at moments when guards are minimal and suspicion is lowest. The plan emerges from careful coordination with other royal family members, who share his growing desperation about Shaka's destructive policies. Prince Dingaan provides political legitimacy for regicide. Prince Maslangana offers additional royal blood to share responsibility. But Mkabayi contributes the operational expertise that transforms desperate wish into executable strategy. The opportunity comes during an afternoon gathering in the royal kraal. To any observer, the scene appears routine. The king in conference with trusted advisors and family members, protected by his most loyal general. The perfect picture of secure authority surrounded by devoted servants. But Mkabayi's presence serves a different purpose today. His tactical mind, trained to identify enemy vulnerabilities and exploit them with deadly efficiency, now focuses those same skills on the man he once served with absolute devotion. The attack unfolds with the swift precision that made Mkabayi legendary on countless battlefields. His assegai strikes with the same accuracy that once protected the kingdom. The king turns, recognition and shock flickering in his eyes as he realizes that his most trusted warrior has become his executioner. "Are you stabbing me, kings of the earth?" Shaka gasps, his voice carrying both accusation and prophecy. "You will come to an end through killing one another." The greatest military mind Africa had ever produced dies at the hands of the greatest warrior he had ever trained. The immediate aftermath of Shaka's assassination reveals the true cost of military betrayal. When the kingdom's greatest warrior turns against his king, the entire foundation of royal authority crumbles. News of the regicide spreads through the military ranks like wildfire, creating chaos that threatens to tear apart the most disciplined army in African history. Warriors who had followed Mkabayi through countless victories now face an impossible choice: remain loyal to the general who murdered their king, or seek vengeance against the commander they had trusted with their lives. Some regiments, particularly those that served directly under Mkabayi's command, accept his justification that the assassination was necessary to save the kingdom from Shaka's destructive policies. Their loyalty transfers to Prince Dingain, the new king who promises to restore the military's focus to external threats rather than internal repression. But other military units, especially those that maintained closer personal loyalty to Shaka, view the assassination as an unforgivable violation of military honor. Their officers demand justice against the conspirators, threatening civil war if the new regime refuses to prosecute Mkabayi for treason. The kingdom's external enemies quickly recognize the opportunity that internal military division creates. Neighboring tribes that had submitted to Zulu authority begin testing the kingdom's responses to border provocations. The military resources that should focus on external defense instead turn inward, preparing for potential civil conflict. Most devastating of all is the psychological impact on Zulu military culture. The legendary discipline that made Zulu armies invincible depended on absolute trust between commanders and subordinates. Mkabayi's betrayal shatters that trust, creating suspicion where unity once existed. The warrior's treachery achieves what no enemy army had ever accomplished: the fracturing of Zulu military supremacy from within. History struggles to categorize Mkabayi's transformation from loyal warrior to royal assassin, caught between competing narratives that reflect the moral complexity of his impossible situation. The case for heroic action appears compelling when examined through the lens of Shaka's increasingly destructive leadership. The king's grief-induced policies were systematically destroying the kingdom that the military had fought to build and protect. His arbitrary executions were eliminating the very officers whose loyalty and competence ensured Zulu military effectiveness. Mkabayi's unique position gave him comprehensive knowledge of how royal policies were undermining military readiness and kingdom stability. Perhaps the general recognized what others could not see: that only decisive action against the king could save the kingdom from its ruler's madness. The warrior's betrayal might represent the ultimate sacrifice, destroying his own honor and reputation to preserve the institution he had served faithfully for decades. His assassination of Shaka could be seen as the final military operation in service of Zulu survival, but the evidence for treachery cuts equally deep. Mkabayi's oath of loyalty was sacred, binding him to protect the king regardless of personal disagreements with royal policies. His military training emphasized discipline and obedience as the foundations of effective command structure. The method itself, assassination without warning, without giving the king opportunity to defend himself or modify his policies, violated every principle of honorable combat that Zulu warriors held sacred. Heroes face their enemies openly. Assassins strike from positions of trust. Perhaps most damning are the long-term consequences. The kingdom that Mkabayi claimed to save through regicide began its decline immediately after Shaka's death, eventually falling to colonial forces that exploited the internal divisions his betrayal had created. Mkabayi's name survives in Zulu oral tradition as both liberator and destroyer, a contradiction that reflects the impossible choices facing those who serve power closely enough to witness its corruption. The warrior's betrayal reveals a fundamental paradox in military service. The very qualities that make great warriors, tactical intelligence, operational capability, access to power, also make them capable of the most devastating treachery. The strongest defenders can become the most dangerous enemies. His story demonstrates that loyalty, however deep and genuine, cannot survive indefinitely when separated from respect. Mkabayi served Shaka faithfully as long as he could admire the king's vision and methods. When royal policies became indefensible, loyalty transformed into its opposite. Perhaps most significantly, the general's treachery established a precedent that would haunt Zulu royal houses for generations. If the greatest warrior could turn against his king, then no ruler could feel entirely secure. The assassination that was meant to save the kingdom instead initiated a cycle of suspicion and internal violence that weakened Zulu resistance to external threats. The broader lesson extends beyond the military context to any relationship where competence creates access to destructive power. Corporate executives, political advisors, technical specialists all occupy positions where their expertise makes them valuable to their superiors and potentially dangerous if that relationship sours. Modern parallels abound in military coups led by trusted generals, corporate betrayals orchestrated by valued executives, political scandals involving insider knowledge weaponized against former allies. The pattern remains constant. Those closest to power possess the greatest capacity for both protection and destruction. Look around your own world. Which relationships involve asymmetric trust where competence creates access to vulnerabilities? Which alliances depend on loyalty that might not survive fundamental disagreements about direction or values? Share your thoughts below. Was Mikabai a patriot forced into treachery by impossible circumstances, or a traitor who violated the most sacred military bonds? Could any system of loyalty survive the kind of moral crisis he faced? If this story of warrior-turned-assassin has captured your imagination, subscribe for more tales from Africa's hidden history. Because the greatest betrayals always come from the strongest hands, wielded by those who once pledged to use that strength in protection. Remember, the spear that defends you today might pierce your heart tomorrow. The only question is what will make it turn.